Have you ever watched a brilliant, like highly successful friend, or maybe, let's be completely honest, looked in the mirror and just wondered, how can someone so incredibly smart make such a catastrophically dumb decision?
Oh, absolutely. It's a completely universal experience.
Right. You know the exact scenario. We're
Yeah.
talking about the friend with a PhD who stays in a glaringly toxic relationship for literally years.
Yeah, or the tech executive who buys into a ridiculous, completely transparent internet scam.
Exactly. Or maybe it's just, agonizing for 3 straight weeks over a basic household purchase, like going down a 40-tab Reddit rabbit hole for a vacuum cleaner, only to end up panic buying the absolute worst option available.
I feel personally attacked by the vacuum example, but yes, it's a deeply humbling thing. We tend to operate under this illusion that intelligence is like a protective shield.
Yeah, like if you're smart, you're immune.
Exactly. We assume that if you have a high IQ or a massive amount of professional success, you are naturally inoculated against irrationality. But poor decision making rarely has anything to do with a lack of processing power, or lack of data.
So what is it then, if it's not a lack of brain power?
It's actually rooted in the fundamental biological architecture of how our minds manage energy and handle stress. Welcome to today's Deep Dives, by the way. Our mission today is to figure out why our brains are essentially brilliant supercomputers being driven by toddlers.
I love that. A toddler at the wheel of a supercomputer. We've got a really fascinating stack of sources to unpack today, right?
We do. We're pulling insights from Nest Labs on the mental baggage of decision-making, core principles from Daniel Kahneman's behavioral economics, and some really deep psychological texts on cognitive biases.
Which really completely shatters that whole homo economicus idea.
Mhm.
That old economic theory that humans are deeply logical creatures always trying to maximize our own benefits.
Oh, yeah. That theory is completely dead in the water. I mean, we all know about Daniel Kahneman's framework by now.
Right. Everyone's either read Thinking, Fast and Slow, or at least pretended to have read it at a dinner party.
Totally. So we know the brain operates on those two different mental tracks.
Yeah.
System 1, which is the fast, automatic, intuitive autopilot, and System 2, the slow, deliberate, analytical thinker.
But what's the catch? Because obviously we aren't using System 2 nearly enough.
The piece that gets overlooked is the sheer biological cost of System 2. The human brain is quite literally an absolute energy hog.
Wait, really? Like it actually burns physical calories to think hard?
Oh, absolutely. It makes up about 2% of your body weight, but burns 20% of your daily calories. Engaging System 2, like doing complex math or navigating a foreign city or analyzing a spreadsheet, literally depletes glucose levels in the brain.
Okay, wow.
So from an evolutionary standpoint, your brain is constantly looking for excuses to shut System 2 down. It wants to hand the wheel back to the lazy, habit-driven System 1 just to conserve calories.
So it's basically like having two friends on a road trip. System 1 is the friend who just wants to pull into the nearest glowing neon drive-thru because they are hungry right now.
Right, and they don't care if the food is absolute garbage.
Exactly. And System 2 is the friend who builds a spreadsheet of Yelp reviews, cross-references them with local health inspection scores, and takes so long to decide that everyone literally starves in the car.
That is the perfect analogy. And because the spreadsheet friend is so exhausting to listen to, we just let the drive-through friend make the calls.
Which is terrifying when you think about big life choices.
It is. This is a phenomenon known as intellectual simplification. Highly intelligent people fall into this trap constantly. They unconsciously default to the lazy autopilot in critical, high-stakes situations where they actually need critical thinking.
And the modern world is completely built to exploit this, isn't it? Like, this is the entire architecture behind nudging.
Spot on. It's exactly why they put the candy at the checkout aisle.
Right, because by the time you get to the register, your System 2 is completely fried from comparing the unit prices of olive oil and reading ingredient labels.
Exactly. So System 1 takes over, sees the bright packaging, and just demands easy calories.
Or even bigger things, like blindly opening a checking account with the mega bank that everyone else uses, simply because actively comparing interest rates and seeking alternatives requires a cognitive load you just don't have the energy for.
Right. It explains why smart people fall for social validation and trends. The brain says, hey, 8 out of 10 people are doing this. Figuring out if it's actually a good idea is just too much work. Let's just copy them.
It's just easier to follow the herd.
Yes. But if we look at what happens when the lazy brain gets flooded with neurochemicals, things get significantly more dangerous.
Yeah.
We transition from just being lazy to being actively hijacked.
Because System 1 isn't just fast. It is deeply, deeply emotional. I was looking at the source from psychologist Paul Ekman, and he describes emotions as a runaway train.
Which is a pretty terrifying metaphor when you consider that we rely on the system to make life-altering choices.
Seriously, a runaway train making your financial decisions. Great.
Well, it's biologically accurate because emotions have the power to override fundamental survival drives. Ekman's research highlights how the emotion of disgust, for instance, can completely overpower extreme hunger.
Wait, really? Even if you're starving?
Even if you are starving, if the only food available triggers intense disgust, that emotion acts like a runaway train plowing through the logical, biological need for calories. You will literally refuse to eat.
That's wild. And it doesn't just stop at overriding biology. It actively hallucinates our reality. There's fascinating data in our sources on how specific emotional states warp our risk assessment.
Right, the mood lens.
Yeah. Like, if you are currently experiencing fear, you will automatically make pessimistic judgments about completely unrelated future events. But if you are angry,
You actually make unusually optimistic, risk-seeking judgments.
Yeah.
You underestimate the odds of failure because anger primes you for confrontation.
that explains so many terrible Twitter arguments. You're angry, so you think, yeah, I can definitely win this debate with a stranger.
Exactly. And the warping gets even more specific. There are studies where participants were induced to feel sad, and it showed that sadness literally lowers the valuation of a person's own assets.
Meaning what? Like they sell things for less.
Yes. If you are sad, you will set a significantly lower selling price for an item you are asked to sell compared to someone in a neutral state. Your emotional state isn't just a mood. It is the literal lens through which your logic calculates value.
But the speed of this is what really messes with my head. How does this emotional hijacking happen before we even realize we have a decision to make? Because usually, I only realize I'm making an emotional choice long after the damage is done.
That brings us to the somatic marker hypothesis. This is a big one.
Okay, break that down for me.
Before your conscious analytical mind even boots up to process a decision, your body is deploying physical signals based on past emotional experiences. Somatic meaning, of the body.
So we're talking about like a sudden wave of nausea or a tightening in the chest, a spike in heart rate, the classic gut feeling.
Exactly. Those sensations are invisible guides. The amygdala, which processes emotional memory, essentially flags certain options with a physical sensation before your prefrontal cortex. The logical part of the brain can even review the data.
Okay, I totally get that if I'm, say, walking down a dark alley or getting ready to send a highly risky text to someone I'm dating. The physical warning system makes total sense there.
Sure, it's a survival mechanism.
But let's apply this to professional analytical environments. Why would a highly educated CEO's limbic system care about which enterprise software tool to purchase? Shouldn't a B2B software decision be insulated from somatic markers?
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But in high-stakes, high-pressure environments, chronic stress keeps the limbic system highly sensitized.
So it's basically always looking for a threat.
Right. If a CEO is looking at a vendor spreadsheet and one vendor's presentation style subconsciously triggers a somatic marker of anxiety, maybe the vendor uses the same jargon as a former business partner who embezzled money. The limbic system sounds the alarm.
Oh, wow. So the CEO gets a literal pit in their stomach, rejects the mathematically superior software, and makes a knee-jerk, emotionally protective choice.
Exactly. And they don't even realize why they did it.
And then they probably hold a board meeting with a brilliant 50-slide deck explaining the strategic vision behind the choice, when really, they just didn't like the guy's vibe.
That is exactly what happens. The psychologist Robert Zajonc built his career on this exact phenomenon. His research argues that feelings completely precede thoughts.
Wait, feelings come before thoughts. Always.
In many cases, yes. The cognitive reasoning we are so proud of is often just a post hoc rationalization.
It's like our logic is just a PR team. The body makes the decision milliseconds in advance based on an emotional reflex, and then our big, smart, billion-dollar prefrontal cortex scrambles to draft a press release explaining why it was actually a genius strategic move.
That is an amazing way to put it. A PR team working overtime to protect the ego, which, by the way, is the next major trap, particularly for highly intelligent people.
Oh, the ego. This is where it's really good.
Because smart people have a unique vulnerability. They inherently want to feel smart. They are deeply drawn to complexity.
Yes. You're talking about the famous Linda problem from Kahneman and Tversky. I think most people listening to this are probably familiar with it, but the mechanism behind why we fail it is so revealing.
Let's run through it for anyone who hasn't heard it.
Okay, so if you're listening right now, play along. The setup is simple. Linda is 31, and in college, she was deeply involved in social justice causes and anti-nuclear protests.
Keep that backstory in mind.
Right, so you ask people, what's more mathematically probable? Option A, Linda is a bank teller. Or option B, Linda is a bank teller. A and D, she's active in the feminist movement.
And the overwhelming majority of people, and we are including graduate students in statistics here, choose option B.
Which is wild. Even though it is mathematically impossible for two conditions to be more probable than one condition alone, the group of all bank tellers completely contains the smaller subset of feminist bank tellers.
Exactly. It's the conjunction fallacy.
But what fascinates me is why the PhDs fail it. They don't fail it because they don't understand probability. They literally teach probability. They fail it because they want the narrative.
The ego demands a satisfying story. Highly intelligent people hear the backstory about social justice and they think, oh, I see the hidden pattern here. I am connecting the dots.
Like they're solving a mystery.
Right. They engage their ego to solve a complex puzzle, completely ignoring the basic statistical reality right in front of them. The story just feels more true than the math.
Smart people literally outsmarting themselves. And that need to be the person who sees the hidden pattern feeds right into the overconfidence trap.
Oh, the overconfidence trap is huge.
There's that hilarious but also kind of terrifying statistic in the sources that 80% of drivers believe they are above average drivers, which mathematically breaks the universe. You cannot have 80% of the population in the top 50%.
That illusion of superiority skews judgment across the board. When you assume your cognitive abilities are above average, the PR team in your head gets very, very complacent.
You just stop double-checking your initial instincts.
Exactly. The data shows that critical thinkers, people who cultivate active skepticism about their own cognitive abilities, make significantly better decisions. A healthy dose of self-doubt is really the only known anti-venom to the ego trap.
Okay, so if we zoom out and look at modern life, we have the lazy autopilot brain, the emotional runaway train hallucinating our reality, and an ego that refuses to do basic math because it wants a good story.
It's a miracle we survive at all. Seriously.
Yeah.
And all of this is happening while we are soaking in internet culture, which seems custom-built to weaponize all three of these flaws simultaneously. It creates this massive amount of what the Ness Labs researchers call mental baggage.
Decision-making in the modern era is never done in a vacuum. You are constantly carrying the psychological weight of previous choices, societal expectations, and just intense digital overload.
And one of the most destructive manifestations of this baggage is the what the hell effect, right?
Oh, the what the hell effect is brilliant, and it explains so much self-sabotage. It's the idea that you make one tiny, relatively insignificant deviation from your goal, and instead of correcting course, your brain just burns the entire operation to the ground.
Like, you're on a strict diet, and you meet a single donut at the office on a Tuesday.
Logically, a single donut represents a minor caloric blip.
Yep.
Your prefrontal cortex knows that mathematically it does not ruin a month of discipline.
But the moment the seal is broken, the brain goes, well, what the hell? The day is ruined anyway.
And instead of stopping at the donut, you order a large pizza for dinner, you skip your workout, and you slide right back into your worst habits.
Or, to use a dating example, you accidentally text your toxic ex once.
Oh, no.
You realize it was a mistake, but instead of throwing your phone in a river, you think, what the hell? The boundary is breached, and you text them 3 more times.
It's so painfully relatable. What is the actual mechanism making us do that? Why do we burn the house down over a donut?
It's heavily tied to cognitive dissonance and the collapse of an idealized self-image. When you set a strict rule, you create an illusion of perfection. The moment you violate the rule, that perfection shatters.
So you just give up entirely.
Holding the tension of being an imperfect person trying to make good choices requires immense cognitive effort. Remember the energy hog. It is literally easier for the brain to completely capitulate and seek the path of least resistance than it is to compartmentalize the small mistake and recommit to the hard path.
Okay, so that's the trap of giving up. But what about the trap of trying too hard?
What do you mean?
Let's say I'm acutely aware of my irrationality. I know about the biases, the PR team, the ego. So I try to force my system to take the wheel for everything. I decide I need a new vacuum cleaner, and I refuse to make an emotional choice.
Oh boy, here we go.
I am going to read every Amazon review, scour Reddit, and watch 40 YouTube comparison videos to find the objectively perfect machine.
You are walking straight into information overload, which inevitably triggers analysis paralysis. The intention is logical. You want to gather data to reduce uncertainty.
Right. Be smart about it.
But the modern internet provides infinite data, far exceeding the processing capacity of human working memory.
So the spreadsheet friend just keeps adding tabs until the whole operating system crashes.
Basically. The mechanism here is an intolerance for uncertainty. Intelligent people fear making a suboptimal choice so intensely that they demand a 100% guarantee of success before acting.
Which doesn't exist.
Exactly. Because perfect certainty doesn't exist, they experience extreme loss aversion. It's the fear that choosing option A means missing out on some hidden perfection in option B.
So you wait, and you research for 3 weeks. And meanwhile, your carpet is just filthy.
The profound irony is that the delay itself becomes a decision, and usually the worst one. The cognitive energy expended on a trivial outcome far outweighs the marginal benefit of finding a slightly better vacuum. You literally exhaust your system, too, on something meaningless.
Leaving you completely defenseless when a high-stakes decision actually comes along.
Precisely.
Which leaves us in a bit of a terrifying spot. I mean, if we move fast, we are emotional toddlers driven by somatic markers. If we move slow, we paralyze ourselves with Reddit reviews. How do we bypass this hardware?
There are structural interventions designed specifically to short-circuit these exact flaws. In academic settings, you see frameworks like Professor Christina Groh's DECIDE model.
So what's that?
It outlines a strict chronology. D, define the problem. E, establish criteria. C, consider alternatives. I, identify the best option. D, develop an implementation plan. And E, evaluate the result.
Okay, hold on. Let me just pause you there.
Yeah.
If I'm in the middle of a high-stakes crisis at work, or I'm deeply stressed about a financial choice, and my somatic markers are screaming at me, I am absolutely not pulling out a whiteboard to write DECIDE.
Fair enough.
It feels like a corporate HR training module. It assumes I have the calm presence of mind to even start the process.
That's a completely valid critique of acronym frameworks. But the power of a model like that isn't the specific acronym. It's the biological forced stop.
A forced stop.
Yes. By forcing yourself to sequentially write down the problem and the criteria, you are essentially demanding that the prefrontal cortex boot up. You're artificially transferring power away from the amygdala.
So it's less about the magic of the 6 steps and more about just doing a disruptive physical action that forces the logic center to turn on.
Exactly. It's a pattern interrupt. But if you need something faster and more tactical for the heat of the moment, the research points to 2 highly effective hacks.
I am all ears.
The first is incredibly simple. Stop the thought loop.
Meaning what, exactly? If I'm agonizing over something, how do I just stop?
The rule is based on information theory. If you have gathered no new data, you must stop running the calculation.
Oh, that's interesting.
When we agonize over a decision, we tend to replay the exact same scenarios repeatedly without generating a single new insight. This rumination spikes cortisol and drains energy. You have to implement a hard rule. No new data, no new thinking.
No new data, no new thinking.
Actively distract yourself. Refuse to engage with the problem again until a new material piece of information arrives.
I really like the brutal pragmatism of that. It gives you permission to just put the heavy box down. Like, I don't have new facts, so I'm putting this down.
Exactly. Conserve that energy.
Okay, what's the second hack?
It's a variation on the classic pros and cons list, but designed specifically to fire the internal PR team we talked about earlier. It's called the brutal pros and cons.
Okay, how's it work?
You draw a line down the middle of a page, write your pros, write your cons, standard stuff. But here's the critical mechanism. Once the list is done, you must review it and ruthlessly cross out anything that is subjective, predictive, or emotional.
Oh, wow. So if I wrote, I'm scared this might fail, that gets crossed out.
Gone. It's a feeling, not a fact. If you wrote, I feel like they have a bad vibe, cross it out. I think this could be fun in the future, cross it out.
So you strip away every somatic marker and emotional hallucination until you are left staring at the stark, objective, measurable facts.
Exactly.
That is fascinating because it forces you to realize how many of the logical reasons you thought you had for a decision were actually just disguised feelings.
It forces a network switch in the brain from the affective network to the cognitive network. It exposes the illusion of rationality.
Because, I mean, being smart doesn't prevent irrationality. It just makes you exceptionally skilled at rationalizing your irrationality after the fact.
Exactly. The goal of understanding all these cognitive biases isn't to achieve some state of perfect robotic logic. It's simply to develop an awareness of your own machinery. Catch your System 1 acting up, recognize the somatic markers, and gently force the prefrontal cortex to do its job.
Before we wrap up, there's one final, slightly provocative neuroscientific reality from the sources that I think ties this all together perfectly. We've been talking a lot about the burden of making good choices.
Right.
There's functional MRI data looking at the anterior cingulate cortex, which is the region of the brain heavily involved in cognitive control and complex processing. And the scans show that this region lights up and burns significantly more energy when we make a free choice compared to when we're simply told what to do by an external authority.
It physically highlights the biological weight of autonomy. Exercising free will is metabolically exhausting.
Which explains so much about modern society. So as you navigate the rest of your week, the next time you find yourself blindly following an online trend, or letting an algorithm pick your movie, or staying in a familiar but toxic situation,
Ask yourself a hard question.
are you actually making a bad decision? Or are you just so biologically exhausted by the heavy burden of free will that you are secretly hoping someone or something else will just make the choice for you?
It's a lot to think about.
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take this knowledge, keep an eye on your PR team, and we'll see you next time.